Hi, Dave.
Annika, I have to click this thing on my screen there. Annika, hi. What are
Oh,
you doing here?
hey. How'd you get here?
Hush.
Welcome back to whatever it was that we were doing. And here we are back again, Dave. We decided to jump back into recording some videos, although
When
it's a
is the
little
last
different this
one we
time.
did? When's the
I
last
think
one
it
we did?
was it Christmas 2 years ago?
Okay.
I think
And we're
so,
back.
which
We're
means
back. We're going to
I'm
string
getting
something together
younger. I'm getting younger.
here. You
Do I
do.
look younger?
Mhm.
Great.
You look
Well,
great.
here we last time we recorded, we had started during that pandemic life, and we were talking about what do we do when the foundations are shaken. And I had come to you, well, actually, it was in my driveway, and I had asked you a couple questions, and you went off and the things you go off in, and I said, why can't we record that? And that started this thing that we didn't even know was a thing where we recorded 54 episodes talking about what do we do when the foundations are shaken and the scaffolding that holds up our life disappears and the things we thought we were sure of we're not sure of anymore. And it took us down lots of different rabbit holes that you and I still reminisce about. um, yeah, it was just a really delightful time. It was one of the beautiful things that came out of that pandemic time, for me,
Yeah.
and I hope for you too. I mean, I guess I don't know. Maybe you
Yeah.
hated it.
And we've continued to hear from people about that just from time to time, that people were following with us and it seemed to matter. And yeah, there were a number of reasons why it faded away. And I think it was important to have some space, but yeah, it's
Yeah,
time
some
to get
things
back
kind
to.
of ramped up in your life, and some things ramped up in my life, and it just was a time to be done and to set that down. But you came to me maybe 6 months ago. You were writing, you were thinking about specifically this topic around what in God's name is going on, which is a very, well, you like to say, like, a very provocative question. What in God's name is going on? And when we talk about what is going on, you can apply that to so many different lenses and places in our lives. And well, you've been writing about it, you've been talking about it, and you came to me and said, I want to record some things. Um, so here we
one of the
are.
reasons I wanted One of the reasons I wanted to record was because in the writing, I felt like I started spinning my wheels and kind of going round and round. And I honestly felt like getting with you and talking some things out would give some structure to this. And I don't know that it's going to result in the book. It doesn't matter if it does,
Right.
but yeah, there were just some thoughts I wanted to get out and get back to this format with. And they're really core things to me that I keep bumping into. We were talking about it just before we push the record button there. I'm affected by that word in second Peter chapter 1 verse 12. Peter talks about the fact that he wants to remind the people he's writing to about things they already know. And I've been at Open Door. I mean, I don't know. I'm sure other people are listening to this, but my heart is around those people I've been for 38 years and other people who may listen to. But I want to talk about things I know they've already heard. They already know. And then Peter says, I want to remind you of these things so that as long as I'm in this earthly tent, and he's talking about his death. And it may sound morbid, but it doesn't feel morbid at all to me. And I don't think it did to him, that as long as I'm in my earthly tent, I want to stir up in you by way of reminder so that after my departure, these things will come to your mind. That's the spirit I have in this. And so I'm really drawn to some core things about the story of God, particularly in this season, where one of my questions is, what in God's name is going on? Because a lot of things that are happening in God's name don't sound like God at all to me.
Right.
So what is going on around there, and what are the things we need to be remembering to remind them of things we've already heard? So there's going to be a lot of that theme, this about remembering and returning to the things we already know. And so that's what we're going to deal with and talk about. And so
Yeah, I'm excited for this and where you've told me you think we're kind of headed. My heart lies around applying God's scripture and God's word just like so practically to our lives, and I know you're passionate about that as well. And so I have really needed, for many, many reasons, which we won't likely go into here out in this public space, but I forget all the time, and life causes me to forget, and pain causes me to forget, and regret causes me to forget. And so to have a place where we can come back, this space that we're creating online where we can come back and remember, really hungry for that. Um,
Yeah.
and I'm sure others are too. So looking forward to digging in here.
Where I would start, and before we get to the things we need to remember, because there's a seriousness to this, because, and I've shared this with you, Anik, as well, is that a lot of this, and this is maybe why it's been hard to talk about it, or know how to
Mm,
talk about it, or even write about it, is because some of this is coming from a place of lament
yeah.
and a place of concern, primarily for the church. And when I say
Hmm.
the church, I don't mean Open Door, I mean the big C church.
Yeah.
I suppose it includes Open Door in some way, but here's the background of that. In 1 John 4:12, John says this: no man has seen God at any time. Stop right there. That's a
Mm.
problem. I mean, if people are gonna know God, how do you know God that you've never seen? So that's a problem. And then he says, but if we love one another, they might just get a glimpse of this God they cannot see. And then I have this phrase that I've used for years, and it's this: that the reason what John says there is true is because there is nothing more powerful on earth to reveal the face of God than when the people of God demonstrate the very life of God by how they live and how they love. So no
Mm.
man has seen God at any time. Well, that's a problem. But if we love and demonstrate the life of God, they might just get a glimpse. Philippians 4:5 says something similar in a different way, where Paul says, let your forbearing spirit be known to all men. I remember it was in the 90s that I preached through the book of Philippians. I remember that text vividly. It's one of those things that stuck in my mind and in my spirit. It's like how we want to do it around here. Let your forbearing spirit be not just known to all men. Let it be, in the Greek, the first thing people see about you. Let that be the first thing people see about you. And what's weird about it, the illustration I remember using now, this dates it, but it's the same issue. It was a guy named Reverend Fred Phelps. When I say that word, that name, some of you are going to remember, but Reverend Fred Phelps was a guy out of Topeka, Kansas, a pastor of a church. I remember showing slides on the screens at Open Door of this
Mm.
guy who had big signs. He would go to the funerals of homosexual people
Hmm.
and picket the funerals of gay people with signs that said God hates gay people,
Mm.
gay people burn in hell, that kind of thing. And here's where I get stirred up about that just drives me crazy, but that's the first thing people see. That's the first
Mm.
thing. That's like, let that be the first. Really, someone's lost a story. Someone
Hmm.
is way off what the story of God is and what the people of God are to be about. And the question that rises out of that is, so if our forbearing spirit is the first thing we're supposed to see, when Fred Phelps holds up a sign that says God hates homosexuals, what's the first thing? So what do you see? That's what you see.
Hmm.
Matthew 5, this passage too, we are the salt of the earth. Jesus says, you are the salt of the earth, you are the light of the world. Therefore, let your light shine in such a way that the world may see your good works and inadvertently glorify their Father who is in heaven. So it's not like you're trying to proselytize everybody and get them to be a Christian. Just let the light and life of God in you shine in such a way in your everyday ordinary life that it inadvertently causes people to go, wow, there's something drawing. I think you get the point. 1 John 1:5 says this, another of my favorites: God is light, and in him there is no darkness at all.
Mm.
Paraphrase of that is, God is light, and in him there is no baloney. That's the original Greek, right? BS, no BS. God's going to give it to you straight. I love that about God. God is like, in him there is no baloney, no shifting shadow, no wondering what he really meant. God is all about light.
Mm,
And what that means, among other things, is this: that the movement of God, one of the ways you can tell that you're around a movement of God, is the movement of God will always reveal what is hidden. Eventually, what is hidden
mm,
will be revealed. What is whispered in the ear, you think of
mm,
conspiracies, or you think of people who are trying to undermine even the work of God, or things that are in a family deteriorating the family, but it's all protected by a secret. Eventually, the movement of God is to reveal what is hidden, to what is whispered in the ear be shouted from the rooftop, things that are hidden be
mm,
revealed. I'm saying all that to say, and I feel like I'm machine gunning everyone here, which is what I do. I feel like we've been in a season, okay, maybe even since the last time we recorded, but it started before that, related to the church, a season. It's a season of what I would call reckoning, where things that have been hidden are being revealed. Um, where some of the most visible and influential ministries and leaders that some of us have grown up under, admiring and following, and even wanting to be like, have they've been exposed. I'm thinking of some of the churches like Willow Creek. I hate to mention names, but I don't care. I
mhm,
mean, like, it matters that I'm not beating around the bush, but something was wrong there. The stuff that went down at Hillsong with the sexual things, and the power stuff, and the celebrity status of pastors in this church culture. There's been a revelation, an awakening. There's been a pulling back of the veil. So things hidden have been recently revealed. Mars Hill, that whole thing with Mark Driscoll. If you
mhm,
don't know the details, I'm not going to go into that here, but that was a power thing, not so much a
mhm.
sexual disordered thing. Among the most discouraging for many people was this Ravi Zacharias thing.
Yeah,
These things, again, it's that whole spirit of what is hidden will be revealed, what is whispered will be shouted one day. That's the movement of God. Part of why I'm saying that is I hear a lot of talk about, like, why would you say bad things about the church? Why would you say even these names? I'll tell you why: because the movement of God is to reveal what is hidden. And I'm yeah, I'm tired of things beating around the bush. We don't have time
yeah.
to mess around. That's kind of the urgency. The most recent for me, and this was, Annika, this is the one that tipped me over, and it gave me the title, "When God's Name Is Going On." This
Mhm,
was a few months ago. It's the front page of the paper. The Southern Baptist Convention, they had been doing an investigation, so it wasn't entirely news, but it was the scope of it was much bigger than most people thought. But it came out that there had been a 20-year cover up, and in the Southern Baptist Convention, at the toppest levels of their organization. It's the biggest Baptist denomination in the country. A 20-year cover up of sexual abuse. Well over 700 victims had come forward, and the victims were marginalized, ignored. One of the fascinating quotes by one of the higher ups in the Southern Baptist Convention was that victims were seen, these people who came forward to say, yes, I was sexually abused by this pastor or something like that, that they were, they're trying to bring change, was actually a tool of the devil to distract them from their mission. Now,
mhm.
you think about that. The bringing something like that out into the light is the movement of God. That's what God does. He reveals
Right.
what is hidden. What is whispered is shouted. And you got this major denomination doing for 20 years, keeping it covered, keeping it silent. I'll tell you what's that's antichrist. It's not the antichrist. That's anti. Whew, I'm getting kind of worked up about that. But that cover up is just one thing that raises this question. So, what in God's name is going on there? Because it was in God's name that this institution was protecting themselves and
Yeah.
not protecting the sheep. And that ought to give you a chill. Ezekiel 34, God has some feelings about this. Ezekiel 34 through the prophet, God says this chilling thing. I mean, I can't imagine hearing this. Say the sovereign Lord through the prophet says, tell the shepherds, I am against the shepherds. I'm against the shepherds. And here's why, because you slaughter the fat sheep and you clothe yourselves with them. Stop right there. Who's a fat sheep? It's a metaphor of people who have resources. They're fat. They have fat. You can use them. They have gifts. They might have money, but you can use them and clothe yourself with them. You can use them. Oh, there's a celebrity who goes to our church, and I can stand with him and bring and put him on the stage, and I can use this person who's got some fat, metaphor of substance, or not substance, but of resources of some sort, even giftings. But I can use them to clothe myself and make myself look good, make our church look successful. But then it says, but the sick you have not healed, and the weak you did not strengthen, and the broken you did not mend, and the scattered you did not gather. Why? Because the scattered and the weak and the sick are of no use to you. If
Ouch.
I sound angry about that, you have no idea how angry God is, like way more ticked about that. I gave the sheep don't belong to you. The sheep don't belong to you. And so there's this. So that's one of the what in God's name is going on there. What is the public witness of the church? Is this concern that has been growing in me? What is the first thing people see? That let your forbearing spirit be the first thing people see. But what's on the first page of the paper sometimes is stuff like that. 25 years ago, and there's another thing. 25 years ago, and this is interesting how long I've been sitting in this kind of issue. Philip Yancey wrote a book called What's So Amazing About Grace. Many of you have maybe read it. And one of the things he was putting a finger on back then was that the evangelical church was then beginning to be more associated with political they're a political affiliation more than the gospel. And I remember even doing, he told this story that's kind of famous now. We were sitting in an airplane and he asked some guy, what does he think of when he thinks of evangelicals? And the guy just kind of randomly said, well, I just think of political involvement and winning the culture wars and that kind of stuff. I did a series of sermons years ago, and it was about the same vintage, 25 years ago. And the title, it was out of Philippians, but the title was When the Culture Spits Nails, which they do. Okay, I'm not a big fan of the liberal left or the right or whatever, but you know, when the culture spits nails and they're not nice to us, can we spit nails back? No. Okay. I mean, you got to get into that. That's a really quick answer. But some people say, yeah, you can. I mean, I'm giving some perspective here. On 25 years ago, a guy named Randall Terry, and this is quoted in Yancey's book, again, 25 years ago. Randall Terry says this: Christians need to become intolerant zealots. In other words, the energy behind that, we need to win the culture wars. My spirit is, but not that way. Okay. We need to be intolerant zealots, stop being scaredy cats and playing tiddlywinks. I want a wave of hatred to wash over you. This is a direct quote out of Yancey's book. Yes, hate is good. We have a biblical duty. We are called by God to conquer this country for God. The language there is fascinating. It would be wonderful to have a revival where the United States of America would turn their heart toward God. This kind of language, though, 25 years ago, is language it's creeping back in some unfortunate and kind of scary places, and we need to remember some things. Recent article. Okay, I just quoted 25 years ago. It's been bugging me because this is not a new thing. Atlantic Monthly, a couple months ago, no, it was over a year ago, actually. Emma Green, the beginning of her article said the name of God was everywhere. Stop right there. Just think of a place where the name of God was everywhere. All of a sudden, I'm feeling safe. I'm feeling this is great. What a wonderful place that would be. The context was the storming of the Capitol and what she was pointing to. And we can feel, I can get like, this isn't fair. but there were Jesus Saves signs, like the God hates homosexuals, Jesus Saves signs in the same camera lens, in the same picture as the gallows that we all saw and that kind of stuff. And I'm not saying at all that everybody who was there was doing that, were presenting this as a Christian thing.
Hmm.
But when you hear worship music being blasted from speakers at that event, and Jesus Saves signs and Christian flags right next to and wrapped in an American flag, it raises this question: what in God's name is going on there? Because in God's name, some people were storming the Capitol. Not everybody, but some, and it kind of makes you go, what is going on here? So my lament around all of that is that the church has been called to be an alternative to the culture. And again, this is nothing new, so I don't want to overreact, but sometimes we become just like the culture, even in doing what we think is a good cause. We end up yelling and screaming and demanding our rights. And we did talk about this a lot around when the foundations are shaken and when we move into power over tactics to win what we think are the right things to win, we start to lose the fragrance of Christ. In fact, we lose it altogether. I want to get off the lament. I'm already depressed talking about all that stuff. The hope. Okay. Okay. The hope of all this stuff and where I want to go with this week after week after week is it actually, ironically, it begins with this pattern. And I really take some solace. I take comfort in the fact that what I'm talking about right now is not a new thing. We're not like, oh my gosh, what's happening? And it's never happened. No, it happens all the time. The stuff we're seeing in our culture, even in the church culture, and making you scratch your head, what in God's name is going on? And here's the pattern: that from the beginning of the story to the end of the story, so I'm talking from the book of Genesis to the book of Revelation, the people of God would forget. We just forget. We forget the story of God. We forget our identity as the people of God. We forget our purpose and our mission as the people of God in the world. The easiest way to do it, and we're going to go over this week after week, is we forget three things. We forget who we are.
Yep.
So we're going to talk about identity in these weeks. We forget why, we forget whose we are, and that we belong to God, and that's our focus, nothing else. We forget that. And the third thing, if you forget who you are and whose you are, you'll forget why you're here. And the people of God, over and over, I mean, it started in the garden where they forgot who they were and why they were there, and they got banished from the garden and they went into exile. So that's the pattern. The people of God would forget who they were and whose they were and why they were here. And as soon as that happened, they would go into exile. Now, exile, we'll talk about that over the weeks, is sometimes a physical thing. They were in Egypt. That was a physical exile. They were far from home. Sometimes it's symbolic. But again, it began in the garden, Genesis 3, when they were banished. But we also know about the Egyptian exile, the Babylonian exile, the Assyrian exile, the Greeks, the Philistines. In Jesus' day, it was Rome. And that's an interesting one because they were in the Holy Land, if you will. They were in Israel. They were in Jerusalem. Rome, they were in exile in some ways, not in power, under the thing of the power and authority of Rome. And every time the people of God would forget who they were and whose they were and why they were here, they go into exile. And every time they went into exile, the prophets would go crazy. Like this is like Old Testament survey, Dave Johnson style. The prophets would go ballistic, and they would just start to scream in a variety of ways. And basically, what they would say would in a variety of ways, it would all boil down to two words: remember and repent. Joel chapter 2. This is my favorite. Remember and repent. Wake up. Hear this as a wake up call. Return to me with all your hearts. Rend your hearts and not your garments. Return to the Lord your God. Here's the urgency. Verse 15, Joel chapter 2. Blow a trumpet in Zion and sound an alarm. Consecrate a fast. Proclaim a solemn assembly. Gather the people. Sanctify the congregation. Assemble the elders. Gather the children. The nursing infants too. Don't leave them in the nursery. Bring them into church. That kind of thing. Like, let the bridegroom come out of his room. Are you kidding me? We're coming. You're not going to have a honeymoon right now. and the bride out of her bridal chamber. Get out of there. This is serious. Let the priests and the ministers weep between the porch and the altar. Whew, and let them say, spare your people. We're in trouble. God, we've forgotten who we are, why we're here, and do not make your inheritance a reproach. Don't make us a byword to the nations. And we become a byword when what they see is God hates. God went, and my sense is that I think we are a church in exile right now, in some ways. That's where some of this is coming from. Joel 2 says, wake up. I love that run I just went on. It was like blow a trumpet. It's like, this is really serious. Like, everybody wake up. Revelation 2, though, he says the same thing at the end of the book. So I wasn't making that up. From the beginning of the book to the end of the book, in Revelation 2, you know this phrase, Jesus through John says, I know your deeds and your toil. I love this. But you've forgotten who you are. You work really hard. You're working really hard, but you've forgotten who you are and why you're here, why you said yes. And so the response to that in Revelation 2:5 is to cure, remember. You need to remember, like Joel was yelling, remember and return to the Lord your God. Same thing in Revelation. Remember, therefore, from where you have fallen, return and do the deeds you did at first. And every time that the people of God would remember, okay, over and over, they would forget. And when they would forget, they'd go into exile. They'd be lost far from home. They maybe didn't move from Maple Grove, but they'd lost their mission, okay? But then when they would remember, every time they would remember, they'd be revived. We're going to talk about revival. I grew up, we need revival. And they'd be revived. And when they were revived, like a splash of cold water in the face when you've been sleeping, and sometimes whoa, I didn't even know I was sleeping. They would, as soon as they would be revived, they would remember who they were and whose they were and why they were here and how they were back. Boom, just like that. They'd be back. Happened over and over. There's my hope. There's the hope. And they would return not only to their God, but they would return to their identity as the people of God. We're not primarily Americans or Mexicans or Polish. We are primarily citizens of the kingdom of God. They remember their identity as the people of God and their mission as the people of God, their purpose in the world, their reason to exist. So whatever hope I have is not rooted in looking around and going, it's not that bad. I'm not going to try to make it worse than it is either. But my hope isn't in whether it's good or bad. My hope is in remembering, in me remembering. And my task, and what I want to do with you, Annika, is to remind people, 2 Peter 1:12, to stir up in people by way of reminder things we already know. We already know. I'm not going to say one thing over the next, 50 years.
You're not going to be alive for 50 more years.
That would be that long. I'm not going to say one thing we don't know. Things we already know and have learned, so that even after my departure, these things will come to mind. So in the next couple of episodes, we're going to talk about the story of God. I will remind us, and you will help me, and we'll be reminded of the story of God and who we are as the people of God, and we'll be reminded of what is the way of God. We'll probably talk about the way of the rabbi, if you remember that. What is the kingdom of God, the good news of God? What is the gospel of God? And what kind of God is God anyway? And we'll pick all that up on the next episode. So that's the
I love
intro.
that. Love that we have, in this episode, come back to that place of hope and the foundation that we can like really sink our teeth and our life into. And although sometimes I think the church is hard to relate to depending on who you are, and to even sometimes I care about the horrible things that the church has done, but I think about exile in a way. Like, some of our hearts are in exile, right? Some of our
Absolutely.
marriages are in exile. Some of our kids and friends are in exile, and that's a hopeless place. Like, exile is hopeless. There are so many characteristics that would make someone experience an exile, whether it's financial, relational, spiritual. I mean, just exile can look like so many different
But
things. And the other thing
huge.
that
I'm
came to
so
mind, go
glad
ahead.
you. Well, it's so. This is why I love doing this with you, because I sometimes think I'm saying that, and people are just going to get that. But the exile, the whole concept of exile, if all we do think of is this monumental, being in Egypt or something like that, we go in exile, and anytime, any place we've wandered far from home is exile.
And
And we
sometimes
can,
it's
and
something you
the other
did,
thing about
sometimes it's
forgetting that.
to anything you ever did. It's happened to you, right?
Yep. Oh, yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. It can happen to you. Absolutely.
Hmm.
And I'm not making that up. We're not just trying to make it all fit, because there would be, in the strictest sense of exile, the Babylonians would come in and invade. In another way, you just got assaulted.
Right.
And all of a sudden you're living far from home and what you thought was safe and secure, and finding your way back. And there's ways that, like that, you're in exile, not even because of anything you did, somebody else did.
Right.
And we'll have to talk about that sometime, which is why these episodes are going to get longer.
So this will be our shortest one. Okay.
This is how long was
I don't even know.
it? Okay.
We're a really polished pair here. Um, I well, again, I bring it back to myself because part of doing these videos is completely selfish. And the fact that these are things that I want and know that my heart needs. So I can't wait to dig in more to this biblical pattern of exile and remembering and all that happens and what that means for our lives and what that means for our hearts and the real people that we love and do life with. So um yeah. Well, you heard it
Can
from
I say
him.
one
It's
more
going to
thing?
be the okay, one more thing.
Okay. Well, just that, and I'm not worried about not explaining this completely, because we'll bring it up again and again. But as we do these, we want feedback from people.
Yes.
Like, there are things we're going to bring up that will raise questions, or even maybe curiosity. Could you elaborate a little bit on that? And we will. I would love to, as we get 3 or 4 or 5 episodes out there and people are interacting with them just themselves, to invite people. And Annika, as time goes on, we can make it clear to people how to do it. We
Yeah,
could
I'll
have a
just
whole
tell him right now.
episode on
Yep.
just answering people's questions and responding to things that people have heard, or whatever. So
Yeah, what makes this all real is that there's real people listening and real people interacting around it. So we love that. Dave doesn't know how to answer questions on Facebook, but I can get on there and do that. So this gets posted several different places. So wherever you're watching it, feel free to just leave a comment in whatever way that platform lets you do that. And we'll get back to you. I'll get back to you, or someone else will. And then if we see a series of questions, maybe we'll even do a little episode on it and make Dave and all his sermons answer our deep questions about life, right? You have all the answers
yes,
in those files behind you.
yeah, yeah, they're all there.
Well, we already know a little bit about what we're going to touch on in the next episode, which is the story of God. So, what story are you living in? And we're going to start digging into this hope that we have when we're not sure what is going on. And God's name is everywhere, and things look different in our culture than we thought. So, take a listen, and we'll see you soon.
Bye.